relationships and what they mean to us, and the four horsemen of the apocalypse, the four factors that predict disastrous relationships. Stay with me. I'll be right back. When it comes to making changes in your life, you're the expert. You are in the driver's seat. Everything else is just a guide. Welcome to InJoyness Podcast, your guide to wellness, recovery, and change. I'm your host, Dela, and thank you for joining me on this episode. So welcome back to another episode. Today we're going to talk about relationships and why they matter, actually. Why do they matter? Why do we need to be in relationships? And we're going to look at some difficulties in maintaining relationships. And we're going to talk about how easily we can turn bad relationships, I shouldn't say bad, unhealthy relationships into more positive interactions. Whether you like it or not, human beings are social beings. We like to be in relationships. We don't like to be alone. We get a sense of satisfaction in interacting with other people. Now, if you are in a romantic relationship or not, it doesn't matter. Relationships, they can be with friends, with your family, with your colleagues, with your fellow classmates, or your neighbors. The truth is, at the base of all relationships, the foundation is kind of the same. It's a give and take transaction. You know, if you look around you and you're questioning some of those relationships, it might be worth to take a deeper look into the part you play in how those relationships are being handled. It's not a one-sided street. It's kind of like a mutual, well, it is. It's a mutual responsibility. So I guess, if you've been talking to someone, you probably know someone around you who's, complaining about this person in their life who is difficult to communicate with. It's probably because they're not really looking at their own part, at the part they're playing in how this is being played out. So I guess the point of today's podcast is kind of bring a little bit of self-reflection into how we individually play a part in our interaction with other people. After all, if we could have lived alone, we would have lived on an island all by ourselves. It just doesn't work. I've never met a single person who is happy and really truly fulfilled in isolation. So we need to learn skills, and we need to get better at those skills by practicing them. So again, you already have all these skills. I think most of us do. It makes sense to most of us. And when you look deep, I'm sure that you have seen the impact of how, whenever you've used these skills, you have benefited, you have seen positive interactions, and you can also pinpoint those areas where you might be, a little bit rusty, perhaps. The good news is we can all learn these skills and we can all get better. So, like I said, it doesn't matter whether we're talking about a romantic relationship, like with a spouse, or we're talking about the relationship between you and your parents or your siblings or your friends or whomever. I feel like I can talk about the Gottman method a little bit. The Gottman method is a method for couples therapy that was created by John and Julie Gottman. And so they have done research after research after research. So what they're talking about, it's all evidence-based. So what they did was they studied successful couples relationship-wise, and they looked at what was working for them, and then they also looked at what was missing in those couples who weren't having positive interaction. And they looked at 4 factors. They actually found 4 factors that were determinant predictors of disastrous relationships. In other words, if this couple was doing these 4 things, they were more likely to end up in separation or divorce. Looking at these factors, you can see how they can also relate to just really any relationship. And we're going to look at those in a second. So building a healthy relationship is really, really important, but also maintaining a strong relationship. This is work. It takes work. It takes constant care and communication. And, people say, oh, relationships are complicated. I don't think they're complicated. I just think they take work. If you're willing to do the work, even if it's just you doing a little bit of work on yourself, changing your style and modeling more positive interactions with the people around you, this is a step in positive direction. So the Gottman method calls these 4 factors the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. So basically a metaphor for disastrous relationships, and what those 4 factors are, they're going to make sense to you. Number 1 is criticism. Now, criticism, nobody likes to be criticized. You probably don't like to be criticized. No one likes to be criticized. When you criticize a person, you might come from a place of, I just want them to be better. I just want them to change something. It's for their own good. What I'm saying is there's a difference between constructive criticism and just criticizing someone for the sake of criticizing. And also, it's probably noteworthy to mention that there's a big difference between expressing a complaint, which most of us do, a lot of times, and criticizing, right? So a complaint is more heartfelt. It's how I feel as a result of something that you do. Whereas criticism, it points the finger at you and it makes it your fault and it makes you wrong, and nobody likes that. So I think if we can find a way to express what we don't like about our partner or, another person we're in a relationship with, we can definitely convey the way we feel as a result of a behavior or something they said, rather than making them be the wrong one, making them be the bad one. So an example that I saw on Gottman.com and how they explain these 4 factors is that a complaint would be like, I was scared when you were running late and you didn't call me. I thought we had agreed that we would do that for each other. That's just telling you how I felt as a result of you running late and not calling me. As opposed to if I came out and criticized you and said, well, you never think about how your behavior is affecting me. I can't believe this. You're always forgetful. You're always selfish. You never think of me. I can't believe this. That's not going to sit well. That won't sit well probably with anyone. And it's not going to be conducive to positive results. If you're looking to communicate your frustration with someone. Also, obviously, if you're in a relationship where you're highly critical of one another, that doesn't mean that you're doomed to fail. It just means that if it keeps continuing, it's hurtful. It makes the other feel like, you're rejecting them, that they're never enough. They're always falling short. So it's good to be mindful of how we word, how we feel. Always. Always. It's so important to be reflective. That's why being mindful, it's so helpful, because instead of reacting, we are actually responding, which is not possible if you're not mindful, if you're not present, right? We're just reacting. We let our emotions take over. The second factor, the second horseman in the Gottman perspective is contempt. So what does that look like? What does contempt look like? Probably different for everyone. When you are communicating with contempt, you are disrespectful, you're mocking, you're condescending, or you're sarcastic, you are calling names. Well, I mean, kids do that, right? They mimic or they kind of make fun of each other. Or, if you're like, your partner says something or does something, and you roll your eyes and you scoff and you walk away. Like, those types of things are considered contempt. Contempt goes beyond criticism, because what happens is with criticism, you're attacking your partner's character, but contempt kind of relays to the partner, to the other person, that you feel like you are superior to them, right? I'm just better than you. Like, it makes the person feel very worthless. It's not a great place to be. And obviously, when you're the victim of contempt, how would you react, right? It's not conducive to a positive communication, for sure. Also, this is really, really interesting, is that this also has impacts on your health. Research has been done to show that couples who are in contemptuous relationships, their immune system is weaker. Isn't that amazing? That it actually impacts your physical health. I find that so amazing that something like this could be impacting you physically, mentally, emotionally, because everything is hand in hand, right? So when we're looking at how something is impacting you, it's really interesting to see, okay, so these aren't just words being said. They are going to hurt that person. They are going to hurt them deeply, to the extent of them actually getting sick, getting more colds, getting more flu. It's just so interesting to me. So contempt actually has been shown to be the single greatest predictor of divorce. We need to learn to remove contempt from our conversations. And I think that's such important topic, and maybe we'll dedicate another episode to just how people can do that. On this website, Gottman.com, you can also find a lot of resources. There's a free relationship quiz as well on there, so that you can fill it out. Maybe I'll just put a link of that quiz in the description of the podcast, so you can actually find it. The third horseman, the third predictor for disastrous relationship, is defensiveness. Just think about when you become defensive, right? Like, so going back to the first factor, which was criticism. I feel like we become defensive when someone criticizes us. We don't like to be criticized, right? Especially if that criticism has some sort of contempt behind it too. It's not constructive. The person just criticizes you. They don't like something you said, something you do, and your character is being attacked. We don't like that, so we become defensive. You feel like you're being accused. You want to justify. You find excuses for what has transpired, and then you want that person who criticized you to back off. So yes, of course, you're going to put up a wall, but it doesn't work. Being defensive does not work. When someone, like, let's say your partner complains, going back to that original example, for example, you were late and your friend is waiting for you at the restaurant. You don't call. You just assume that they'll just know that, you're just running late. And when you get there, they say to you, you don't care about me. You're always late. You're so selfish. You have no concern about how you made me wait here. Instead of listening to them and validating their complaint, you take it as a criticism and you put up a wall and you start defending yourself and usually coming up with justifications. What is the big deal? I'm just running late for like 10 minutes. I was so darn busy. You have no idea how busy my day is. You have no idea how many things I have to do. All you do is complain. This is normal. Normal conversation, right? I don't know if you can relate to that. Certainly, I can think back of many instances in the past where this is exactly what happened. It's just when you're defensive, you always find a way to reverse that blame because you want that to be your partner's fault, that other person's fault. Instead, what we are recommended to do is to respond in a non-defensive way. Admitting our responsibility, accepting, yes, you're right. I made you wait. I'm sorry that I made you feel this way. I should have called you to let you know that, I was going to be late. This is my fault. Now, that's hard. That's difficult because we don't like to be in the wrong. We, for some reason, maybe it's pride, maybe it's ego. We don't like to be blamed. So just putting it out there, if that's how you feel, most probably your partner's feeling exactly the same way. Again, it's one of those little ways. All we have to do is take a moment, breathe, let that simmer, think about what was just said instead of responding right away. Once those words leave your mouth, there's no taking them back. Unfortunately, there's no rewinding. It takes a little bit of effort, presence. Probably the results might be more beneficial, more helpful way of communicating. The last of the Four Horsemen is called stonewalling. Also, response to contempt. And I mean, this makes sense because contempt is on its own the most definitive predictor for disastrous interactions. So I think that when there's contempt, so much else happens as a response. So stonewalling is another. And stonewalling is when the other person completely shuts down. They don't want to respond. They kind of withdraw. Because they don't want to confront the issue. That's kind of like their way of dealing with the issue. And so they turn away, they act busy, or they do something else. Maybe like you've kind of witnessed this, you're trying to say something to someone and their head is down and they're doing something on their phone. And instead, all you want, like with all of your heart, is for them to look up, put away their phone, look at you and listen to what you have to say. I think that is such a big issue for us when we are interacting with other people. We have a conflict, and instead of trying to talk about the conflict, trying to talk about the issue, we pretend like we don't care or, just totally stonewall. Creates a lot of negative emotions. And if it keeps going, it becomes a bad habit, but that conflict has not been resolved. It's momentarily been put on the back burner with no resolution. So the problem persists, and you even feel more contempt now because you feel ignored. You feel like your emotions have not been validated and that you don't matter. So that's the result of stonewalling. There are so many ways that we can improve on our relationships. And if you look at these 4 factors, every single one of them is they're so specific, and it's so easy to look at them and say, okay, so this is what not to do. Let me think about what I could do different the next time this happens. Let me not repeat the same thing because obviously that didn't work and that's causing all these problems. Criticism doesn't work. So let me rephrase what I need that person to know in more of a I statement, more of a complaint from the heart, as opposed to criticizing and attacking their character. And then, contempt, such a poison to a relationship. as you heard me say, because it can physically make a person sick just by rewording, honestly, how you say something. That can definitely help that situation. And then defensiveness, instead of becoming defensive when your partner or someone you're in a relationship with is telling you their complaint or their view, instead of, being defensive, maybe, being open to hearing them out, validating their feelings, validating where they're coming from, and being open to perhaps, I might be wrong here. And how can I make this better? How can I make them feel that I care? And honestly, thank you for telling me how you feel. Because if you do, that means you care about this relationship and you want us to get closer. You want us to get over this hump or whatever it is that's, affecting us negatively. Let me hear you out and thank you for telling me. Help me to see how I can do better. And I think that so many times we let our ego get in the middle of our loving relationship that, we don't even realize because we're just so used to it. It's a habit. It's just a habit. And instead of stonewalling, pay attention. I mean, relationships, like we said, I think we all, at the base of it all, we all want the same things. We all want to be seen. We all want to be heard. We all want to be accepted for who we are. And so if we can see that for ourselves, then we can also want it for other people. We can't change other people. There's no way. We always come back to this, right? We have absolutely no control over other people, their behavior, or their thoughts and actions. The only thing we can control is our own thoughts, our own behaviors, and our own actions. And I think by just being aware of that, by just realizing that alone, we can be so much further ahead in life. I feel like the best kind of teaching is by modeling, and we don't have to say anything. We can show them. We can show them the way to a positive communication, more constructive interactions, and healthier relationships. If you need more information about the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, which is from the Gottman method, I really encourage you to check out their website at Gottman.com. I very much enjoy this approach, not only for couple therapy, because that's their specialization, but I see this as being so helpful in any kind of relationship. Thank you so much for being with me on this episode. I would really appreciate your comments, knowing if you have any experience with any of this. And until next time, this has been Dela with the InJoyness Podcast. Thank you for listening to this episode of InJoyness Podcast, a guide in your journey to wellness, recovery, and change. In gratitude and love, I'm your host, Dela.